Welcome. My name is Linnea Anderson, and on behalf of the First Fridays Committee and the Archives and Special Collections Department, welcome to First Fridays. This season's theme is Matters of the Heart, and today's presentations will also be posted later on the University of Minnesota Library's YouTube channel. First Fridays is a monthly series of presentations made possible by a generous gift from Governor Elmer L. Anderson and Mrs. Eleanor Anderson in honor of former Library Director Dr. Edward B. Stanford. The presentations are based on materials in the University Library's archives and special collections. A special thank you to the interpreters from Middle English who will be providing ASL interpretation for today's presentations. If time allows, we will have a question and answer session at the end. And Zoom audience members, if you have any questions for our speakers today, please submit them using the Q&A function and not the chat so that we can keep track of your questions. And in-person audience, please hold your questions until the end of the program. There will be a tour after the presentations with Andy. And we'll also have a special creative opportunity today that Kristen will explain during her talk. At this point in the program, we will pause for a land acknowledgement. The University of Minnesota Twin Cities is built within the traditional homelands of the Dakota people. It is important to acknowledge the peoples on whose land we live, learn, and work as we seek to improve and strengthen relations with tribal nations. We also acknowledge that words are not enough. We must ensure that our institution provides support, resources, and programs that increase access to all aspects of higher education for Native American students, staff, faculty, and community members. So moving on to the presentations. Our presentations today feature the Wangensteen Historical Library of Biology and Medicine and the Andersen Horticultural Library. And the first presentation is There's Something in the Air, presented by Lois Hendrickson, the curator of the Wangensteen Historical Library of Biology and Medicine. So why do we care about smelling good? From perfume and plant scents to hygiene and odors, Lois is going to explore what's in the air at the Wangensteen. There we go.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming out today. If you haven't ever visited the Wangensteen Historical Library of Biology and Medicine before, you should know that we're just one of the few special collections on campus that isn't located here in Andersen Library. We are over on the other side of the river in the Phillips Wangensteen building in the health sciences part of campus. The Wangensteen Historical Library was founded in the mid-20th century with financial support and direction from Dr. Owen Wangensteen, a surgeon who developed the Wangensteen suction apparatus, which vastly improved success in abdominal surgery. Dr. Wangensteen was passionate about having a rare medical library on campus for health science students. Currently, the Wangensteen Library has a collection of more than 73,000 volumes, and even though we're a library and not a museum, over 8,000 artifacts. Our text materials cover the history of health, medicine, dentistry, nursing, pharmacy, public health, from 5 centuries, 1430 to 1945. And our artifacts are generally from the 19th and 20th century. In addition to research and teaching, 91 unique class sessions per year in all kinds of disciplines, we also create and install exhibits. In this image, you can see exhibit viewers taking in our current exhibit, Disembodied, Reembodied, which addresses medical depictions of women's bodies in the library collection. It was a collaborative project between the Wangensteen Library, Professor Jenny Schmidt in art, and Assistant Professor Jamie Korneman-Sees in clinical ethics. It's open to the public, and we'd love to have you stop by. It will be on view until February. So let's dive into our subject. We're going to use scent as a framework for our theme, matters of the heart. I considered so many aspects of heart as a subject: anatomical, physiological, surgical, herbal medicine, botany, public health. And in the end, I decided to interpret this theme through one of our collection's focal points, which is pharmacy, and to look at the emotions and implications attached to smell. Since, well, really forever, people have used organic substances, frequently plant-based, burning them ritualistic as incense. Did you know the Latin expression perfumum means through the smoke? They've used organic substances for personal care, medicinal products, and of course, as perfume. And the latter is connected to ideas of attraction and seduction. Plant odors have also been proven to have a physiological health effect. Perhaps you've caught a whiff of a certain fragrance and had the experience of being transported to the past, maybe a childhood memory, a place, or someone special. I recently experienced this myself at a funeral where the practice of releasing fragrant smoke, usually from frankincense and myrrh in a metal censer, is meant to evoke reverence for the deceased. Smell is a universal human faculty and is one of the pathways to knowledge. The senses connect us to a whole host of memories of experiences and images that are determined by our culture and the world we live in. Smell, like taste and touch, is very much about space and place. One has to be close to the material to perceive its smell. Humans have experimented with fragrances for millennia, from the ointments of ancient Greece to the expensive essences of the Roman Empire. Deceased Greek citizens who could afford it were liberally doused in perfume and buried with their possessions. With access to the Mediterranean trade, there was an abundance of ingredients, and raw materials like frankincense and myrrh, which are both resinous tree gums, were incorporated and imported. That everyone recognizes perhaps the plague doctor. In addition to their spiritual and ritualistic purposes, aromatic substances such as incense and perfumes were believed to have medicinal qualities. Afraid of dying or catching a disease, people believed that scents, perfume, incense, smoke, pushed out dangerous smells, plague. Before modern germ theory, developed in the 1860s by French chemist Louis Pasteur, disease was thought to originate from miasma, or poisoned, unhealthy air. In 17th century Europe, physicians who tended to plague victims wore a coat covered in scented wax, breeches connected to boots, a tucked-in shirt, and a hat and gloves made of goat leather. The nose on the plague mask was filled with more than 55 herbs and other components like viper flesh powder, cinnamon, myrrh, and honey. It was believed that the herbs would protect the doctor's nostrils and lungs. Remember, they were trying to avoid breathing poisoned, unhealthy air. Smell also tells us to come close or run away. Epidemics placed smell at the heart of medicine for a time, and specific instructions for treating the air around disease, masking bad smells, and curing illness were widely distributed. This is a snippet of advice from 1665 and was distributed by the College of Physicians in the United Kingdom, which was in the midst of a plague outbreak. They advised treating the air, and I've had this translated because if I had a screenshot of the book, it's very difficult to decipher the old typography. So it says, fires made in the streets often, and good fires kept in and about the houses of such are visited, and their neighbors may correct infectious air, as also frequent discharging of guns. Also, fumes of the following materials: rosin, pitch, tar, turpentine, frankincense, myrrh, amber, the wood of juniper, cypress, cedar, the leaves of bays, and rosemary. One or more of these, as they are at hand or may be procured to put upon coals. Perceptions of odor changed in the 18th and 19th centuries, as did the use of plants and perfume. The Industrial Revolution contributed to the general stench in the air, and governments took up large-scale hygienic projects, subterranean sewers, and water treatment facilities. Bathing became more common, and a new association between body odor and negative things like poverty and disease grew. Historically, scent and perfume were significant in health and medicine, yet the use of perfume was much broader in scope. An early modern perfumery recipe by Simone Barbe from 1693 is a window into the early intersection of perfume, fashion, and social standing. He says, clean and wash your skins, meaning the leather the glove is made out of. Cut and sew your gloves, then color them as you please. If you perfume them with other perfumes, do it before you perfume with flowers. You can see here he's got ambergris, civet, orange flowers, butter, and then you're mixing them into the gloves with some fine cotton wool. These perfumed gloves and later handkerchiefs circulated in early modern society and were a type of social currency for all genders. There was an embroidered pair of gloves for every outfit. They were luxurious gifts that served as love tokens. Scenting gloves and handkerchiefs was the key to personalizing them, just as we personalize our bodies by choosing scents today. Plants have been used to treat and manage different disease conditions in different parts of the world beyond time and memory. Use depends on local knowledge and cultural practices and requires a level of skill and training. Hashikai, or measles posters, were mass-produced at the height of Japan's worst outbreak of measles in 1862. Incense burning and fumigation, which you see at the bottom of this image, were a purification practice and perhaps also a method to purge fearful thoughts and emotions. In addition to the connections between scent and emotion, those matters of the heart, perfume has multiple other dimensions: fashion, manufacturing, economics, colonialism, just to name a few. Literally hundreds of books have been written about perfume. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that Frederick Welling, who was the former Dean of the College of Pharmacy, collected and donated many of the rare books in the Wangensteen collection. Today, we're just going to look at a few of them. These are some images from a first edition signed by the author, Rimmel. It's a French translation of his detailed history of perfume. It delves into the science behind perfumes and ingredients and techniques used to create different scents. Rimmel joined his father's perfumery business in London in 1834. He was a pioneer, responsible for manufacturing and marketing some of the earliest commercially made cosmetics. He was one of the first to create mouth rinses, scented pomades, and his famous toilet vinegar, what perfumes used to be called. He also scented theater and concert programs and even Valentines. High society flocked to his store to purchase decadently packaged perfumes, soaps, and bath essences. Rimmel London has been and is one of the most popular cosmetic brands in the United Kingdom today. Fun fact, you can purchase Rimmel products today at places like Target. Rimmel's name later became synonymous with mascara, which he developed using a very new product, petroleum jelly. The name Rimmel actually translates to the word mascara in Portuguese, Spanish, Greek, Turkish, Romanian, and Persian languages today. Other authors, such as Scoville, whose recipe is included on the screen, had books full of recipes because pharmacists were expected to compound a multitude of scents: cologne, perfume, pomades, sachets. Here we see a recipe for cologne whose main scent is violet. Most perfumes include a variety of other ingredients, as we see in this recipe. Professional perfumers, called noses, score a fragrance based on scent phases that evolve over time, called notes. Top notes are the initial bursts of smell, heart notes, the middle phase, and base notes, the lasting foundation of the scent. These noses consider the balance between these notes, the intensity, longevity, and so forth. Some of the ingredients we see here, like musk, for example, is a fixer, which prolongs the perfume smell. Bergamot oil, also seen, here has a fresh citrus profile, similar to the scent of orange, and is added as a top note. Fun fact, Scoville, a pharmacy professor at the University of Massachusetts, is really best known as the developer of the Scoville scale. Sounds like some people are familiar with that. If you're not, and if you enjoy eating or growing peppers, this is a measurement of spiciness or heat of chili peppers and other substances. And they're recorded in Scoville heat units, SHU, which quantify the subjective sensory experience of heat, not unlike the sensory subjective experience of perfume, which smells differently on each person. Many of the texts in our collection include manufacturing techniques, equipment, and changes in processes such as distillation. There are journals devoted to the sourcing of perfume ingredients, and later, as synthetic chemistry is developed, how to derive scents in a lab using volatile solvents. This image is from a lavish album of 31 mounted heliogravures, which is a type of photograph from the Schimmel Company, a German company that played a significant role in the perfume industry. Like a number of other texts in our presentation, there are very few copies of this. There's only 7 that show up in World Cat, 1 in an art museum because this type of photograph is very rare. The Schimmel Company developed a patented process for synthesizing geraniol, which is a chemical component of rose oil from citronella oil. The resulting artificial rose oil, known as rose geraniol, was sold at a lower price while providing the same sensory experience as genuine rose oil. In the early 1800s, Schimmel began manufacturing its own rose oil in mass quantities. Consider for a moment the workers pictured here. They harvested and plucked petals off roses in bloom. Don't forget the thorns that were involved. And of note, 2 pounds or 1 kilo of rose oil required them to pick 5,000 to 6,000 kilograms, which is about 11,000 pounds of flowers. Over time, Schimmel shifted from manufacturing pharmaceuticals to producing essential oils. They produced a journal called the Schimmel Reports, started in 1860, which we also hold in the Wangensteen Library. It compiled the latest scientific analysis, production methods, and market news from around the world relating to aromatic chemicals. These reports were instrumental in the invention of essential oil chemistry as a scientific field. Sampling these reports is a fascinating look, not only into cosmetics, but into the political, economic, and global world of perfumery. For example, the 1897 reports discusses conflicts in Manila, the site of the Spanish-American War at that time, and those from 1915 through 18 discuss the impact of World War I and talk about our enemies from the German perspective. All in regard to how ingredients for perfume are being transported, exported, imported around the world. There's an undercurrent in these reports of both pride and anxiety around the business of perfumery. We've talked about perfume in conjunction with medicine, health, recipes, fashion, and manufacturing, and I want to conclude with one of my favorite, as yet unresearched artifacts in the collection. I believe this was commissioned by Twin Cities lawyer, real estate magnate, and businessman who oversaw much of the early growth of the streetcar lines in the Twin Cities, Thomas Lowry. Lowry Hill, Lowry Liquors, Lowry Park. This toiletry or vanity set was made by Tiffany and Company, and the bottles are clearly marked as such. It contains 3 trays in what is something the size of a briefcase, but quite deep. The top 2 trays, oh, also it has embossed alligator leather it's made of. The two trays consist of, the top two trays have shaving equipment, brushes, combs, and various sized bottles. And the bottom tray holds a variety of surgical instruments. Surely one of a kind. It's monogrammed, Thomas Lowry to Dr. H. H. Kimball. There's a bust of Dr. Hamlin Kimball at Mia. During a trip to Europe in 1887, Dr. and Mrs. Kimball commissioned portrait busts. At present, not much else is known, but that's a rabbit hole for another time. What's really interesting is contemplating what products might have been intended for these bottles. Early 20th century American companies sold hair tonics, hair cream or oil, lotions, and scented waters for shaving. Many of these products, including hair gels, antiperspirants, and milled soaps, were scented to mask the smell of the ingredients. American ads emphasized that these products were manly and would give men a professional edge. Fragrance companies developed their own parallel language for men's products, using terms like cologne, aftershave, and eau de toilette. As the popularity of men's fragrances increased, they were no longer described as perfumes, and the industry began using the term cologne to distinguish them from similar female products. Which brings me full circle. When I was contemplating this theme, I ran across a May 2024 article in the New York Times entitled, "When Did Teen Boys Get a Nose for $300 Cologne?" Some Gen Z kids can't seem to get enough of the luxury fragrances. The author, Kelly Holterman, says, using terminology they observe online, middle schoolers at sleepovers are discussing high-end fragrances the way that sommeliers might analyze wine. The scent Le Mail by Jean-Paul Gaultier has a really good honey note, said Luke Benson, a 14-year-old who lives in Orlando, Florida. Tom Ford, Noir Extreme, on the other hand, is a lot spicier and a little bit darker. Middle schoolers who normally save their money to buy many other things, I was fascinated by them thinking very hard about saving their money for perfume or cologne. There's really an incredible complexity to perfume, and it was such a joy to explore all the resources in the collection for this presentation, and it gave me a real appreciation for the nuances, the work that could be done with these resources, and I was happy to present this to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Lois. So we'll give our presenter a moment to get up here. Thanks, Kristen. Our second presentation is Herbs for the Heart, presented by Kristen Mastel, the head librarian and curator at the Andersen Horticultural Library. How can you activate your senses for love? Wear a satchel of sweet-smelling lavender, sleep with yarrow under your bed, bathe in the fragrance of rosemary leaves, heal your heart with hawthorn. And Kristen is going to explore how herbs tie into rituals and recipes related to love in folklore from around the world.
Thank you, Linnea. Thank you again for the invitation to share some of our general and special collections at Andersen Horticultural Library. Because that's a mouthful, I'll abbreviate it to AHL, or sometimes referred to as the other Andersen Library from where we are. So our library is located at the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum out in Chaska, Minnesota. And I'm just curious, for those in the room, how many of you have been out to the Landscape Arboretum? Okay, how many of you have been to the library? Ooh, yes, I love all the hands. Excellent. Well, whether you haven't been or you're a favorite patron of ours and frequent flyer, you're always welcome to come back as we change out our exhibits fairly frequently. Well, this year we turned 50 years old at the Arboretum, and every few weeks we selected a new theme to highlight different rare books from our collection and had them on display. And so while I realize probably not everyone here has been able to see those selections from our collection, we are turning those into an ebook over the next year. So just stay tuned for that free ebook to launch, hopefully next summer. So in the meantime, we thought we'd explore a little bit about herbs for the heart. And I also would like to thank Catherine Pearson, one of our library assistants, really did a lot of the research and writing for this presentation and was going to co-present, but unfortunately she couldn't join us today. And thank you to our other library assistant, Alyssa Gregory, who did the slide design for us as well. So first up today will be yarrow. Yarrow is actually the 2024 International Herb Association Herb of the Year. Yarrow has roots in Greek mythology. Yarrow's scientific name, Achillea millefolium, named for Achilles. And Achilles discovered, of course, a small flowering plant out on the battlefield where he gathered it and turned it into a healing balm to stop bleeding for his soldiers. Now, in North America, yarrow has a long history of uses for medicinal properties by indigenous peoples. Yarrow has spiritual significance in some indigenous cultures and is often used in ceremonies and rituals combined with other plants. It is documented in the purification rituals in particular. Yarrow is used medicinally to treat a variety of different ailments, such as wounds, fevers, digestive issues, and headaches. For example, the Ojibwe have used yarrow leaves and flowers infused in hot water to make teas for treating colds and fevers. And the Southwestern Navajo have considered yarrow a sacred life medicine and use it in ceremonies to promote health and well-being. In the English and Irish traditions, yarrow was used in love and romance rituals. Young women would pluck yarrow from the fields and then sleep it under their pillow in hopes to dream of their true love at night. In Suffolk County, England, a yarrow leaf was used to tickle the nose and to incite bleeding and recite this little poem. Yes, a little opposite of what we just learned. So they would say, yarrow, bear a white blow. If my love loves me, my nose will bleed now. If my love doesn't love me, it don't bleed a drop. If my love do love me, 'twill bleed every drop. Okay. In this instance, the herb known for staunching blood flow was used to hopefully stimulate blood flow. So in this illustration here, we have yarrow on the slide from our copy, AHL's copy of Leonard Fuchs' Herbal De Historia Stirpium, published in 1542 and written in Latin. It was later translated into German, English, and Dutch. And Fuchs was one of the most prominent early German botanists of his time, known as one of the three fathers of botany. Fuchs was a knowledgeable physician. He studied at the universities of Erfurt and Ingolstadt and spent most of his time teaching, actually, medicine at the University of Tübingen. Fuchs Herbal presented the medicinal uses of plants, but also really was a landmark in natural history. There are many known first depictions for Europe of different plants from the Americas. For example, in this volume, we see corn and pumpkins for the first time. The text of the herbal was written primarily based on Dioscorides, and the organization of the plants is not really based on a classification system, since this predates Carl Linnaeus. The nearly 500 plants in Fuchs Herbals were each illustrated with a woodblock print and then hand-colored. The plant drawings for the work are attributed to the artist Albrecht Meyer, and the drawings were then transferred to woodblock by Heinrich Vollmaurer, then printed by Vitus Rudolf Speckel. The prints of Fuchs herbal demonstrate the value of using intricate botanical illustration for describing plants and was created at the start of an era of woodblock printing for books. And woodcut blocks used in Fuchs were saved and actually reused in many other botanical works, such as William Turner's New Herbal. And AHL actually has 4 herbals that have subsequent woodblock prints using Fuchs. Now, the plant fuchsia was actually named in honor of Fuchs. Fuchs means, anyone know? Fox in German. Oh, actually, as seen in the portrait here on this picture. Fuchs is often depicted in a doctor's robe with a fox fur collar and wearing a very flat style hat typical of university doctors at the time. The University of Minnesota is unique that we actually have 2 first edition colored copies of Fuchs Herbal, which is a rarity because most known copies are uncolored. Copies are available for comparison both at Andersen Horticultural Library and Wangensteen. Luckily, both Lois and I's collections and copies have been digitized, so you can also view those and bring them up page by page and compare the coloration on UMedia as well. So that is a little bit on yarrow. So I'd like to transition and share a little bit on rosemary. And rosemary is a member of the sage family. Its scientific name is Salvia rosemarianus, and was only recently changed from Rosemarianus officinalis in 2017. Rosemary has its roots in religion and folklore around the world, and rosemary is often used as a memory aid and remedy for headaches as well. Sweeter herbs like rosemary are believed to attract love, happiness, and prosperity. Rosemary is associated with many Oridishas or deities of the Yoruba religion in West Africa. And the chant on this slide that you can read is from our 2024 book, The Encyclopedia of Rutical Folklore, Plant Tales from Africa and the Diaspora, a recent addition to our general collection, which you're happy to browse. Rosemary and cinnamon also may be used for encouraging love. Rosemary is often associated with memory and folklore in European culture. For example, in Shakespeare's Hamlet, Ophelia muses, "There's rosemary, that's for remembrance. Pray you, love, remember." In this scene, Ophelia is using herbs and flowers as symbols to convey her thoughts and emotions following the death of her father, while also foreshadowing her own demise. In Europe and Australia, rosemary has traditionally been placed on grave sites to symbolize the remembrance of loved ones. And in the Elizabethan era, rosemary played a role not only in funerals, but in weddings as well to symbolize love and fidelity. And brides would wear rosemary in their headpieces, and couples may exchange sprigs of rosemary at their weddings or give them as a favor to their guests. The illustration of rosemary on this slide also happens to be from our copy of Fuchs Herbal. Now, third, and maybe the most famous herb for health of the heart is hawthorn. And there are many components of hawthorn that have traditionally been used medicinally for the heart. For example, tea of the hawthorn leaves and flowers have long been used to calm the flutterings of an anxious heart. In the 19th century, hawthorn became a common remedy for treating heart and circulation diseases in Western medicine. And modern herbalists continue to use hawthorn as a means to open blood vessels and strengthen the heart. The hawthorn tea recipe on this slide is from Herbal Academy and is intended to be consumed around the winter solstice, which we're about to come upon, to calm and open the heart during this hectic and frantic season. So the illustration of hawthorn on this slide is from our beloved Curtis Botanical Magazine from 1919. Curtis is the world's longest running, continuously published botanical periodical, existing since 1787. And we have almost a complete copy at AHL. AHL has many other serials related to herbs and herbal medicine. And a few of those are things like the Minnesota Herb Society, which was founded in 1963 to study the growing use of herbs. They also reside at the Arboretum. And if you ever want to help contribute, you can come out and dig with us on Tuesday and weed. So AHL also subscribes to Herbalgram, the Journal of the American Botanical Council. Herbalgram continues articles, research, and reports on medicinal plants and the history of their use, as well as modern clinical and ethnobotanical research, along with legal and regulatory developments in the sales and marketing of the plant product industry. We also received the Herbalist, the annual publication of the Herb Society of America, and we also have a complete copy of Herb Quarterly Magazine, which is now ceased. So why is this important? Having both historical herbals like Fuchs back to the 1500s and modern journals allow us to discover how modern botany has evolved over time. And for our last herb, and maybe one of the most beloved, is lavender, or maybe hated if you really don't like the scent. Lavender, scientifically known as Lavandula augustifolia, has been cherished for its calming and therapeutic properties for centuries. It's associated with love and romance, is deeply rooted in history and folklore. Cleopatra is famously said to have used lavender perfume to captivate her lovers, leveraging its enchanting scent to enhance her allure. In various cultures, lavender has been incorporated into love spells and rituals aiming to foster affection and emotional intimacy. Lavender is an aerobic subshrub native to the low mountains of the Mediterranean, but is widely cultivated everywhere. Has anyone been to a lavender farm here or elsewhere? There is a newer farm just south of the Twin Cities if you'd like to explore. Lavender is known to be nurturing in its energy and open the heart and mind, cultivating deeper connections and understanding between partners. This makes lavender a popular choice for those seeking to enhance their romantic relationships. Beyond its romantic associations, lavender is highly regarded for its benefits to heart health. Scientific studies have shown that lavender essential oil can significantly reduce stress and anxiety, which are critical factors in maintaining our cardiovascular health. In a systematic review published in the International Journal of Cardiovascular Sciences, found that aromatherapy using lavender essential oil led to reductions in blood pressure and heart rate amongst patients with cardiovascular disease. And the herbalist John Parkinson from 1640 described it as being especially good for all griefs and pains of the head and brain. Now, lavender's strong scent was believed to also signify its magical properties. A cross made between lavender sprigs hung on a doorway would keep the devil out. Now, a lavender in the buttonhole would keep evil at bay while out and about. I happened to forget mine today, so fingers crossed. All right, and lavender also suggests that a sprig under a man's pillow will make him dream of the woman who put it there. As seen in the image here, Pietro Andrea Mattoli's edition of Materia Medica has very distinctive illustrations. He was a dedicated botanist who identified over 100 new plants. And Mattoli was fascinated by the work of the first century Greek physician Dioscorides. His commentary on Dioscorides' Ancient Herbal became a massive encyclopedia, making Mattoli famous and leading to his roles as a physician to Archduke Ferdinand I and also to the Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian II. Sadly, Mattoli died of the plague in 1577, so he clearly wasn't using the plague doctor's mask. Now, the library has the German edition of this work. It also was published in Italian, Latin, French, and Czech. Besides identifying plants described by Dioscorides, Mattoli added descriptions of plants not known for herbal or medicinal use, making a shift from studying plants solely for medicine to studying them for their own sake. Notably, he documented an early variety of tomato that was first recorded instance of the fruit in Europe. And a little fun fact, if you have a cat allergy, Mattoli was the first one to describe a case. The woodcuts in Mattoli's work were of high quality, making the plants recognizable even when the text was unclear. These illustrations increased the book's appeal and usefulness. The woodcuts of the first German edition from 1563 were very large and dramatic, as you can see on the screen, often filling the page artistically rather than accurately depicting the plants. Now, the success of Mattoli's work is evident, with over 30,000 copies of the early editions sold and more than 40 editions published. So talk about the bestseller of the time. So while we are not medical professionals, we hope you enjoyed learning a little bit of the folklore, recipes, and rituals from our collection. Of course, we do advise you to consult a qualified medical professional before using herbs and supplements. We'd also like to thank you for your time. And to expand on this, we're going to offer a little lavender sachet making session after our talk here today. To be kind to those that might have a sense allergy, or maybe you just don't care for lavender, we're going to be up on the 3rd floor. So you can take the stairs or elevator upstairs to room 308. And our colleagues, Anna and Rin, if you want to raise your hands, are going to kindly help with the sachet making from 1 to 1:30, again in room 308. If you want to continue your botanic learning, please join us for the opening reception at the Minneapolis Central Library this Saturday or tomorrow from 1 to 3. We're exhibiting our Flora and Fauna Illustrata collection, and it will be on the 2nd floor in the Cargill Gallery. And it will be open until January 26th, 2025. So you have plenty of time to come out and see our beautiful contemporary botanical illustrations by local and regional, actually international artists as well. Lastly, and here's just one illustration if you need a little teaser of what you'll see there. Lastly, please consider following us on Instagram because we're new. So if you want to get out your phone and little snap the image, we're also at UMN Hort Lib, and you'll get some behind the scenes sneak peeks, learn about our events at the Arboretum, get some beautiful shots of not only the books and the grounds when we're out there. But again, thank you so much, and I'll turn it back to Linnea.
All right. Thank you, Kristen. All right, so now we have a special addition to the program. Mike, come on up. Come here, come on. All right, so Mike should be a familiar face to all of you regular attendees at First Friday. And Mike Sutliff is retiring at the end of December. And all of us in Ask, yeah, we got you up here. All of us in Ask want to say thanks to you, Mike, for getting First Fridays online during the pandemic and making it possible for this series to continue and bring the stories of the collections to our audience at a difficult time. And we can't thank you enough for your technical expertise, patience with wonky AV systems, last minute changes to programs, and misbehaving microphones. I was involved in that one. And for dealing with the logistics that make the online program possible. And we hope that you really enjoy your retirement. Come back and watch the
I
programs
will.
in a relaxed position somewhere, not having to deal with any of it. And we are going to miss you. And audience and ask staff who are here, let's show our appreciation. Mike, we really mean it. We really appreciate it. And you can't have a retirement celebration without cupcakes. So after the program, there are cupcakes in the atrium, including gluten-free, for those of you who prefer the gluten-free kind. So thanks.
You're very welcome. Everybody enjoy, because I enjoyed doing this. I really did. So,
Wonderful.
thank you.
Okay, so we have a few minutes for folks who might have questions for our presenters, either from the online audience or in person. Any, oh, see one over here? Oh, there you go.
Whether our lavender for the sachets is local.
And presenters, can you answer into the mic so folks?
I wanted to, but unfortunately I couldn't source quite enough as quickly. But there are some lovely lavender farms that I highly recommend. There's a newer one in Farmington. I forgot its name, but yes, I'm looking, and if you have a source, feel free to send it my way. But time crunch, my apologies.
Great. Any other questions online or in-person audience? Oh, I see a hand over there.
I was brought back to maybe 10, 14 years ago when we all stopped wearing scented deodorant and using scented soaps before going to work. And then at the end of my career, saw a cart of various scents come into the clinic for use with patients. So what literature is out there about that scented workplace and what kinds of reaction that caused and so forth? Do you have anything on that in the Wangensteen Library?
So the Wangensteen Library, its materials go through generally 1945. So I don't have contemporary research on that. I think because I'm located in the Health Sciences Library, which thinks about the effects of scent on people, there are quite a lot of things thinking about that. And Kristen, are there things in your collection?
Yeah, actually out at the Arboretum, we have the nature-based therapeutics program, and they do a lot of partnerships in clinical and other locations looking at kind of scents, gardening with scent, using the aromatherapy with different patients to look at different outcomes. So I do know there is kind of like active research and active application. But certainly we can follow up and send you some resources.
We got one over here.
Hi, I have a question for the first speaker. I'm curious, it was such a huge topic, how you focused in, you talked about the intersection of different things, and every time I do research, I always get overwhelmed. So I'm curious what some of the tools you use and what some of your mental approaches you use to keep it focused and doable.
Sure. Well, I did not know much about the history of perfume. Literally nothing, except I had owned some perfume at some point in my life, right? And so I started with a kind of a broad survey. What were some secondary sources? Some of which I used through interlibrary loan, some of which we had here in our collection. As I said, there's so much written about perfume. And then I looked to see what was in the Wangensteen's collection. So I had, if you know what a book truck is, I had 4 book trucks full of books, some in English, some in French, some in German. And I had to sort of scan those, right? So part of my work is lots of reading. So I look at the table of contents, the index, kind of look through there. What I thought would catch your attention, knowing kind of I've done some of these, so I knew who some of the audience members were. So I thought about like, what would an audience be interested in hearing? So if I was writing this for a class, I might have a different approach. Then I thought, well, I can't talk about everything with regard to perfume, so I'll just touch on a few things along the way. Yeah, we're all happy. All of us in special collections and all the librarians are happy to help think about how to take a really big topic and make it a doable research project. So we're happy to talk to you, make an appointment.
I think there was, yeah, there's a hand over here, right in the center. Oh, and then.
So,
Go-
okay. So it strikes me that these sources were from men, and that likely a lot of this lore was passed down by women. So are there sources written by women? And if so, do they differ in any substantive way from those of the men?
Yeah, our collection has an enormous collection of manuscript recipe books, which generally are written by women. And women in their roles, especially in the pre-modern period, were responsible not only for making food, but caring for animals and children. And also they had recipes both for health. So some of these perfume recipes were used, as we talked about, for health reasons. And also later, as the recipe books advanced into the 18th and 19th centuries, more about how their use was for other reasons, attraction, for example. There's a lot of recipes about how to attract someone to you, for example. So that sort of domestic sphere, there's really a lot of great sources.
And then we had a couple of questions here and here.
Oh. My question is, do you have anything on the smells of the people of Minnesota?
Oh, so
By that,
interesting.
well, I think of the Dakota
Mhm.
and perhaps sage, and then moving up, certainly the Voyageur, but then Northern European, and then moving through Southern European, and then here in the 20th century, the Vietnamese, the Tao, the Somali, all have very distinct scent profiles,
Mhm.
okay? And they're all part of Minnesota.
Well, I mean, I can't tell you how that might smell on someone, right? But there's probably, for example, in the Bell Library, there's probably an enormous amount of scents that are used for various reasons, thinking about the voyageurs. Like what scent were they putting on to repel bugs, for example, right? Or to repel animals from their packs. And then you mentioned sage. I think that's another area where you could look at what are the plants being used. That would be, I think, a really interesting area of research.
This gentleman's been waiting patiently.
Yes, I'm curious if you came across any information about the toxicology of some of these herbs. I was particularly interested in the hawthorn and how it's used for the heart, and if you can get too much of it, and that can cause heart problems. I think herbs are often assumed to be completely harmless, but not all of them are.
There is in our collection an enormous amount in the pharmacy collection about the toxicology, and in the recipes and it is to the point where how much is toxic. Like 2 drops, great. 10 drops would be terrible, right? Like there's whole enormous amounts of charts and tables in the pharmaceutical collection materials that talk about the toxicity.
Yeah, similarly at Andersen Horticultural Library, we have both sides of the spectrum, herbs that are harmful and herbs that are helpful. So there are various books if you want to research either side. Fun fact, in November, we had writers come out on Mondays when we're usually closed to kind of just have quiet working time and use our materials. So we pulled materials based on what they were working on. And there were 3 mystery writers who were using our collection on maybe how plants could hurt or kill off someone in their book.
All right. Okay. One more quick question, and then we should wrap up first. Sure.
Yeah, quick comment to the, not the last question, but the question before. A lot of, scents that come off of people are because of the food that they eat and the herbs and spices that are used in that culture's cooking that actually come out through the pores.
Garlic being a great example, right?
Yeah, but we think of garlic, I think often as the mouth, but it's also
Right.
through the skin.
Right.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for the fantastic questions and to our presenters for the great answers. All right, a few reminders. All right, a couple of reminders. If you're interested in the tour, you can meet up with Andy in the hallway to get a tour. Try to sort your compostables and recycling in the bins. If you want to make a sachet, we've got two folks to lead you up to room 308, and we invite you to visit our wonderful exhibit, Journey to Joy, Rise, Relevance, and Representation, which is in all the galleries in the building and relates to the children's literature collection. Thanks for attending.